Hey everybody, welcome to Take the Stage Voice Studio. Today we're going to talk about an issue that singers face that isn't really created by the singers themselves. It's kind of an industry issue, but we have supported it through the culture. And I think it's time we take our power back as singers and make some changes in the industry. And the issue that I want to talk about today is transpositions. So to understand transpositions, we have to think back in history with the different composers and what they wanted to do, what their intentions were as composers. Some composers were very open to the idea of transposing music, and sometimes some composers were very strict about wanting certain things. And this makes a difference because for singers, our voices are not the same. You can say that we've got this nice fach system and we've got dramatic sopranos, and then we've got spinto sopranos and lyric sopranos and blah, 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 all the way on down to all the thing, coloratura sopranos. But even 10 coloratura sopranos are going to have 10 different voices. Their ranges are going to be different, their dramatic power is going to be different, and the way that they're able to perform is going to be very, very different. So this is a really, really important conversation for us to be having. And before I go any further, I want to acknowledge that a lot of this information that I'm talking about today comes from an article from 1989 by Will Crutchfield in the Deseret News. And he was writing specifically about some outrage at the Metropolitan Opera when they were transposing bits of Otello. So thank you, Will Crutchfield, much appreciated. Your journalism and supporting singers and the things that are helpful and important for singers. If you look back into history, we can see that in Baroque opera and classical opera, the recits were used basically as a way to propel the story forward, but the tonality was loose enough that you could kind of transpose. If you needed to transpose an aria, you could, and then you could use the recits to get the orchestra to where they needed to be. So for one singer, they want to be in the key of D. For another singer, they want to be in the key of C. No big deal. We just can use the recits to modulate to a different place. And that was done all the time. And in fact, a lot of the roles, if not all the roles, pretty much, were written with specific singers in mind, with the specific skill sets of singers in mind, the range, the dramatic power of the singers. And so when you get a role like the Queen of the Night, which was written with some incredibly high notes, but it was also intended for the singer to have a lot of dramatic power up there to sound kind of menacing. And that type of singer is so incredibly rare. So singers would sing it in different keys regularly, and no one cared. It was not a big deal. I mean, can you imagine, like in pop music, if singers were like, no, you need to sing that in a higher key. It is obviously less of an issue because they tend to sing more original music. But even when they're singing covers, a singer gets up and they're like, oh, this is the key I wanted in. And their band's like, okay, great. No one cares because it's all about what is best for the singer. And that's how it used to be. And yes, as time progressed, we got into music where the recits were less important, and music got more through composed. And when we get into romantic music, yeah, like if we're talking about Verdi, he really did care what keys he wrote in. He had favorite keys. He had keys that he felt like sounded a certain way. Maybe I'll have to stay in the sun a little bit better. Good thing I put on sunscreen. He had specific keys that he liked, but even Verdi composed and then transposed pieces for different singers with the roles of Gilda, Germain, Radames, and others when he thought that it was more important to get a specific singer into a role than to have the exact high note that he wanted. And I remember my old teacher, Christine Szynski, talking about a conductor who really wanted her to sing Lady Macbeth. And she kept being like, I can't sing Lady Macbeth. I don't have that D flat. I don't remember if it's a D flat or C sharp. And I just can't do it. I can't sing that pitch. I can't sing the role. And finally, the conductor called her and is like, Verdi himself had singers that would leave out the D flat. Like, the D flat is not the most important thing about this role. It's about having this specific gravitas, the ability to tell this story. And if you've got the voice for it and the conductor likes you, then why do we care about that one pitch more than the whole rest of the role? And that's really kind of the crux of the issue right now, is that in our current sensibilities for singing, higher is always better. You have to be able to sing higher than everybody else. And it doesn't matter if your middle voice is weak, or if your vowels are this, or if your vibrato is wobbly. If you can sing high, then you are it. You're the thing. And this is a problem, not just for singers, because singers end up doing unhealthy things, squeezing in their throat, trying to squeak out higher pitches. But it's not good for our industry. It's not interesting for an audience to sit through operas where singers are uncomfortable trying to scream out high notes, or where there are big holes in singers' voices, but they have the high notes. And so they think, oh, great, I'm doing really, really great because I've got this high note, but the rest of the role doesn't fit their voice very well. And so it's an issue for singers, it's an issue for the industry. And even a conductor like Toscanini, who was known for being very strict, was known for transposing some of Die Zauberflöte, the Queen of the Night, Fidelio, and maybe it wasn't his favorite thing to do, but he's like, oh, well, I like this singer, we can do that. Another good example is Lucia, which was written in a key and then lowered, and people use the lower key as an opportunity to show even more range. So they started adding high notes that were even higher than the original high key. But then it kind of becomes this competition about like who has the biggest range. And did it always mean that you needed to have the biggest range to sing Lucia? Or is it just kind of a new made up thing that we've added on to the intent of the composer? And then the other composers where similar things have happened. And unfortunately, it seems to be more about competition rather than the intent of the composers. And I'm not saying you shouldn't sing with a big range. If you got a big range, if that's your thing, that's awesome. You should totally do that. But it's important to have a well-built voice in the whole range rather than just showing off range. And what happens is that singers are afraid to show off that they have any limitations. We kind of have this expectation that if you're singing professionally, that your voice has to be 100% what everyone's expecting it to be. That means if they want the high C, you gotta have the high C. And so then singers feel like they've got to be able to do what everyone is expecting them to do. And that's just not how it was historically. Composers or conductors would work with singers to rewrite phrases, to change the line, to leave out a high note if it didn't work for the singer. Remember, this fach system is just totally, it's basically made up. And I'm not saying that there's no value in it. If the singer has the goods to sing the role, but doesn't have the high note, conductors and composers have always been happy to accommodate. Why not now? And it's because we have this kind of impossible standard in our minds. We've heard enough singers singing roles, and we're like, oh, that's the standard, that's the gold standard. And now everybody has to magically meet that standard, even if just physiologically their voice is different. Oh my gosh, you mean we can have physiological differences? Our voices can be different from each other? You know, I have students who come to me that learn their high notes way faster than I did. But sometimes those same singers don't learn their middle voice or low voice as fast as I did. And that's not a problem. Not every voice is supposed to be exactly the same. And my top may never be Tito Rufo's top, but his low notes were never as strong as mine are. And yet we still kind of end up singing similar rep. And that's fine, but the way that we sing it is going to be slightly different. And that's fine. It's no big deal. Even Rosa Ponzel, who is maybe the greatest singer of all recorded history, transposed so many roles that she sang. I believe Aida, Traviata, Forza, so many different things that she sang, she transposed. No one cared. And yet we, who are, you know, trying to live in the greatness of other singers, feel like we can't have limitations. Why is it that Rosa Ponzel was able to have limitations and no one thought that she was a bad singer, but everyone else has to have even a higher voice and do everything perfectly just how she did it, but even higher? It doesn't really make sense, does it? Here's such a fun example of this. Tito Shipa, when he was playing in Mano, he was playing opposite Bido Sayao, the soprano, and they needed to transpose some of the role for him. And this meant that some of the role was transposed for her as well. Meant a little bit lower, maybe a little more awkward in her voice. And she's quoted as saying, quote, "He was such a great artist, it was worth the effort." And I love that so much because she understood that it was more important to have him singing the role than it was to have the exact same tessitura or the exact same high note as was originally written in the role. I'm going to throw in another example of a composer where transpositions are pretty much impossible, and that would be Wagner. But even Wagner himself, who would not want his music to be transposed, purposefully didn't write as many high notes because he knew that not every singer was going to be able to sing with this massive high tessitura. So my call to all of you, to the opera world at large, to orchestra conductors that involve singers, it's really important that we start normalizing individual voices, the skills of individual voices, and stop pretending like this standard that we've invented was intended by composers. And let's take it one step further, and I want to call on all of the orchestras of the world to stop this nonsense of raising the tuning higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. You know, in the 1800s, there was a French law that wanted the standard for A, what we call A440 now, to be at A435. And it was because singers demanded, us, the singers, the divas that we are, demanded that orchestras use a lower tuning. And then it was in 1939 when an international organization of conductors and musicians standardized at 440. And now it's common to be at 444 for most orchestras around the world, or even higher. And this is not only basically an irrelevant thing for an orchestra to be doing, like the audience will not care. It will not give the audience a better experience. Yeah, every time you click up the tuning a little bit higher, it's gonna sound a little bit brighter, whoop-de-doo. So at what point does this stop? Because 448 is gonna sound brighter than 444, and 452 is gonna sound brighter than 448, and it's never going to stop, and it's never going to not sound brighter to go higher. And the instruments, it doesn't really make a difference for them, but it is a massively harmful thing for singers and for opera and for any classical music, for, you know, if we're singing Mahler symphonies, Beethoven symphonies, all of these different things. Higher, 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 higher is not better. So it's just adding insult to injuries, that now not only do we have this impossible standard of needing to be able to sing higher notes with higher interpolations. Yeah, can we just mention that a lot of the high notes are not intended by the composer anyway. Sometimes it's just like cadenzas or things that then become tradition, and we have to, it's just all nonsense. More high notes, raise the tuning, and pretend like this is what music was supposed to be, when it's all just modern inventions that we have made up, and then we're damaging singers' voices and making it a worse experience for audiences to say in operas and listen. We're making it a worse experience for them and pretending like somehow like this is what audiences want. Audiences want to hear singers struggling. Audiences want to hear a so-called brighter sound at the expense of singers. And so I know I'm preaching to the choir for a lot of you, but it's time for us to, like I said, to start taking our power back, to start demanding that we sing roles in the way that fit our voice best, even if we don't have the high A or the high C or the whatever. That we start normalizing sharing the fact that our voices are different and that it's okay. And when we do, we record ourselves and put it online, that we share things, you know, share arias that fit our voice really well, even if we do it in a different way than such and such a singer. And that we talk to conductors, we talk to composers, and we normalize singing melodies that fit our voice with or without high notes. We normalize not raising the tuning, and doing all of this for the benefit of singers, for their health, and for the audience quality of the opera that they're going to listen to. And so I hope that this was a helpful video for you to listen to. If you'd like to keep working on your voice and learn more about singing to the highest standard, and having a strong voice from all the way from the bottom through the middle to the top, not just the high notes, hit me up, evandunn.com, and let's talk about your singing. I'd love to meet you and learn more about you. And I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you next time.